Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the podcast today, we have Ash Borland. Ash, welcome.
Hey, Thomas. Thank you very much for having me on.
It's my pleasure. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure. I'll say my name is Ash Borland. I'm a personal branding coach. I specialize really in personal branding, content marketing, and social selling in that kind of order. I help mostly coaches, consultants, freelancers, so anybody who really can strive and stand out from by themselves and can fight the David and Goliath kind of corporate companies, with their own personal brand. And I help them clarify their marketing message, establish themselves as a thought leader in their industry or niche, depending on where we're looking, and effectively increase their impact and income through social selling, so they don't have to outreach to people. They're going to get people coming to them. And that is what I do in a nutshell, without trying to self-indulge in my life story too much.
Well, it leads on nicely to the next part, which is topic of discussion today is social selling. Happy to talk about that?
Oh, I love it. Absolutely.
So we're all on the same page. What's your definition of social selling?
My definition of social selling, obviously there's the official definitions of stuff, but my take on social selling is the idea of creating enough selling through social platforms or through social interaction and not through cold outreach. That's how I would define it. I'm quite an advocate of trying to separate this idea of social media. I think we focus too much on that it's just social media. I think, social selling takes place in marketing, in networking rooms. It's about creating relationships with people, which then will lead to sales over time, usually of a greater amount, usually much better clients. But it just takes a bit of seeding. You've got to plant that seed in. But I think it's something that is a bit of a buzzword right now. I think it's a bit of negative press as well, because a lot of the kind of rah-rah salesy guys have taken it on in their marketing and really, push that. And I think it's not always as bad as it seems, but I think social selling in its essence is just selling a product, a good or a service through socializing, wherever that may be.
So not social media, but actually social interaction.
Yeah, social media is just a tool. I don't like social media. I do all my business through it, but I think it's an amazing tool when used correctly. It's an absolute plague when used incorrectly. And I think that social selling itself is relationships. That's all it is. I mean, we focus now with obviously the pandemic. We've had to go onto social media, which is fine. But the rules of the jungle, so to speak, still apply online and offline. And I think that's where people get wrong. They disconnect the two.
So, I mean, you touched on probably one of the misconceptions there. Are there some others that people get wrong about the content of or the topic of social selling?
Yeah, so one thing, I mean, I could sit here and moan about what people get wrong all the time, Thomas, in a good way. Like I try to be positive with it. One thing that people get very, very wrong, I think, with social selling is they don't understand that it's about hitting on influence principles. So, like Dr. Cialdini's influence, I have to give him credit because otherwise people say, it's not yours. I know it's not mine. But like Dr. Cialdini's influence principles require things like, the main one is reciprocity. And this idea of, if I give you something without any expectation of something in return, you will feel like you have to give me something back. And that is the most important thing when it comes to social selling. Is we talk about building relationships and people buy from people, but the real nitty gritty is you need to be massively giving more than you take, and you have to be building a reciprocity. I always say fill your reciprocity well. So it's like trying to create this idea that people owe you and you don't, you've given without any expectation. Where people go very wrong with social selling is that when it comes to that reciprocity, if you say buy my stuff or download my ebook or whatever it may be, if every post or every interaction you have is trying to move them next rung on your value ladder, which in marketing we want to do, if every single thing is like that and it's to the point, you're not social selling, you're just selling. And on social media, and that's all it is. There's a big difference. And I think, I work with clients on this all the time, and I do talks on this all the time where people will say, I do social selling and I can do an audit on their kind of brand ecosystem and go, no, you don't. You just market online. And so they're very different things. And people miss that point. If you don't ask for the deal, the close, you'll probably find you'll get more business.
Interesting. Have you done tests around that particular thing, or and the other thing I wanted to touch on is correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like a long-term play rather than a short-term game.
Yeah. So long-term, it's a huge long-term play. There's it's not a short-term move at all. And actually, I love it. They say it's the average is 8 to 9 online interactions before someone will actually buy or even consider buying from you or moving to that next level of the rung. Before I got on here, I was on a coaching call. That guy had followed me for a year before he even got on the call with me. So it is a massively long play. And I don't think it's very much a do as I say and not as I do scenario, because I don't do any outbound marketing at all. Like, I only create value. Like, I have a value ladder that is, free content, free masterclass, and then it goes up the levels. And I don't have any outreach. Now, the reason why I don't, and I say to my clients, and this would be probably if you were working with someone, I would advise people they should have sales messages. They should have normal standard marketing. They should be at like a range of these things. The reason why I don't is because my job, we talk about tests, my job is to make sure the stuff I teach works. So if I can sustain my business on purely zero outreach and only using social selling tactics, then I can happily, comfortably say to clients, and I've got clients now doing it, where I'm like, it's possible. Do I think it's easy? No, it's not. I would say you need it definitely and anyone who's listened to this, you need to make sure there's a range. You need to increase your, it's like one income stream. You don't want one lead source, but over a long period of time, over a 5-10 year play, social selling, in my opinion, should be the main source of lead source if you nurture it now. But absolutely not. Don't which is what I hear a lot of people, I've seen people do. I very openly have said that when I very, very first started doing this, like, no, you don't need to do that. When you start to learn less about marketing, just about psychology, because that's what I know more about. No, you don't need that. And then you start realizing, no, you probably do need inbound leads and you do need all that other stuff. But you do have to, it's a long play, 100% a long play. I mean, I saw results in about a year when I did mine, but I was like hammering it hell for leather. But I think really give yourself 5 years and you'll see the best amount of return when it comes to social selling.
Well, I think in some instances, some people kind of maybe do a bit, dip their toe in. Maybe the value is incremental at best. How much value should they be giving over, and frequency in relationship to that as well? So
it's really weird. Like, you go full circle. Everyone loves and hates a bit of Gary V, and we all hear, do more. And then you kind of realize, and you think, well, maybe less is more, quality over quantity, and all that stuff. I think when it comes to it, though, kind of doing this now for a while and seeing it work, and the more you do it is the better. But you have to maintain a clear and consistent message. So I say to people all the time, to build a successful brand, not even just personal brand, the same thing, you need a clear and consistent message, and then you need patience. These are 3 core principles. And the more you put out there that is clear and consistent, that's the most important thing. Not just throwing content out there. Showing what you had for lunch doesn't help anybody. Putting up a photo. I had one of my clients, I did a bit of we had like a session last week, and I said, her husband went away on holiday, has gone away for work. And I said, that's great that you put on LinkedIn. It humanized you. Absolutely. But did it generate you any business? She was like, no. I was like, exactly. I was like, it doesn't. You've got to be careful, because every step you take is either going to take you one step closer to being an authority in your space or one step further away. So the most you can do at keeping that consistency and that clarity, but also without affecting your, I'd say it's a very hard question to answer, because it is, without affecting your day-to-day job as well. So it's like you want to find this maximum amount of exposure with the minimal amount of effort that is clear and consistent. It's really hard, and it is trial and error. And really, like, it takes about 6 months of figuring that out, because, you know, do you prefer podcast? Do you prefer audio? Do you prefer written? Do you prefer, and I'm a visual guy. I'm dyslexic. So I couldn't put a blog out every single day, but I could do a podcast. I do a daily podcast. I can do that fine. That's absolutely fine. But so it's all about what works best for you, but it's consistency over intensity every single time. You know, don't just dive in and think I'm going to, you know what, as you said, they dip their toe in it. I'm going to do this for every single day for 2 weeks and see if I get any results. You won't get any results. You'll just annoy a lot of people, because that's what comes at the beginning, because you're going to annoy people, because you go from they're never hearing from you to hearing from you every day. You have to get past that. And then it comes from years and years of compounding. Like, oh, Ash is the guy that talks about social selling and personal branding every single day. Get off my feed, please go away. Actually, I need someone to help me with that 5 years later. That's kind of how it works.
There is something you touched upon, which I think is worth highlighting, which is the subjective nature of, I don't know, that your choice of activity and your choice of media. Because I feel like some people jump on a particular media because other people are getting success from that, but it may not be their preference. You know, you mentioned the fact that you've got a best way of doing it, and you say it was 6 months trying to figure out what's best for you, or
yeah. I think 6 months for me, like I've tried every single form of, again, because you talk about testing, it's my job to know what works and what doesn't work on each platform level. The thing that has become a real kind of fixation of mine over the last maybe 4 months has been this obsession of understanding high level strategy as opposed to platform level strategy. So you have to think about, if you're trying to build your personal brand to social sell, because that's what I, you know, I'm not in here to build personal brands so people feel good. You want to make money from it. That's the end of the day. So you have to have a social selling element. Too many people, exactly what you just said, Thomas, is about the people watch what other people do and they go, that works on LinkedIn, or that works on YouTube, or that works on here. But if it doesn't align, one, with what you like, and two, with what you're actually trying to do, then you're better off sticking with what you like and what you're actually trying to achieve than going and following what and I'm a bit of a video gamer in my like nerdiness, is what the meta would say. You know, it's what the kind of the general consensus is. Like LinkedIn, the general consensus on LinkedIn right now on filming this is you should do written based text posts. Video doesn't perform very well, live doesn't perform very well, images perform okay, but written is the one that's going to give you the most virality. But if you are somebody who specializes, someone who, like myself, who prefers video, I built a studio for video, then putting a written post out there might get me a short-term win, but it's going to give me a long-term loss, because I'm not building my brand around what I want to be known for, and also optimizing your content for the right people. The people who are watching that content, then you get people who are going to be watching it and going, these are actually people who are interested in buying. You want to try and weed them out. So I think sometimes if you focus on what is working, we see this with TikTok right now as well. Everyone's going to be a TikToker because it seems to be the latest gold rush. But when that's oversaturated, they'll move to the next one. Whereas the best thing to do is just stick to the one you enjoy. Go at it every single week, every single day, whatever frequency you decide. Add value. Don't ask for anything in return within reason. You know, you want to do soft CTAs. You want to try and get them to keep pushing through to more content. And your inbound leads will increase, and so will your bank balance over time. But it does take time. But 6 months of figuring it out. Like I said, I did 6 months of doing all of it, and that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to invest in audio and visual. In regards to money and setting up a studio and all that stuff, I was like, okay, I'll do that then. But up until that point, I didn't know what was going to work for me. I thought I liked writing. After many people spell checked me, I realized I didn't like writing, and moved from there. But there's lots of things you can do, but definitely stick to what you enjoy the most, because you've got to be there. When a guy called Bob Gentle gave me this amazing advice. He came on my show and he said, Ash, he said, you've got to love what you do. He said, because you're going to be your number one fan for the first 3 years. He said, because no one else is really going to care for about 3 years until you've done it long enough for people to really care. And that's just really important. If you wake up every day and enjoy what you do, then that's going to show in your content, which is going to increase the chance of people being more related to you or inspired by you, which is going to increase the chances of them buying from you. So yeah.
So how far along are you now?
I've been building my personal brand and social selling for 6 years. I set up my consultancy business just after the pandemic started. So I originally started in finance. So I originally started in, I was a performer, I was an actor. So I learned all about about performing and presenting to camera and all that stuff. I was a professional actor, worked in London, and then West End, got into finance and started making content around, I didn't want to pitch. So I made content around how to buy houses and built a name in the finance, like kind of mortgage space. And that was 6 years ago. And what I found though was, as it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and I ended up having to sell my leads and outsource them to other people because I couldn't deal with them. I started having brokers, other advisors coming to me and going, Ash, can you help me do this? I don't know how you've done it. Like, and they all laughed at the beginning. They all laughed. They're like, oh no, exactly. So I can see it. And then part-time, was a consultant doing this part-time for other mortgage advisors for about 2 years. And then when the pandemic hit, I was like, well, okay, I have this finance business that I don't enjoy. And I have this kind of like idea of a personal brand kind of consultancy part-time thing. And I said to my wife, my son was being born. I was like, can I go full all time? Can I do it? Is this something that's viable? And we did, and we approached it. We shut down the finance business, just became an introducer only. So I outsourced all the leads, went to other brokers who were much better than me at the job. I was very good at generating the leads, but I'm a dyslexic mortgage advisor. I don't work well. And then I went all in on this. And to be completely honest, in 1 year, my podcast ranked number 14th in the podcasting charts, in the marketing charts. I've met some of the most incredible marketing people, 7-figure, 8-figure, 9-figure business owners, all by just doing this. Like, this is all. I just woke up every day. From the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed, I constantly tried to build my personal brand and social sell. I made more money in 12 months than I made as a financial advisor. But the most important thing about it is I enjoyed it. And because I enjoyed it, more people wanted to speak to me. And so I'm a year in full time as this. And it's literally like going, and if I can do it, anyone can do it. The only difference between, I say this to people when I speak to them, the only difference between me and someone else, okay, I had a performing arts background. I do have a deep obsession with psychology, have done for a long time. So that helps. But 6 years ago, I didn't know how to record on a phone. I didn't know how to record on a camera. I didn't know how to do anything. If you want something enough, if you want to find, I didn't like cold calling, and the pain of cold calling was enough to make me go through the pain of learning a new skill to never have to cold call again. And that's all. That was all it is which state of uncomfort is worse, and which one is less. And I think I didn't at the time know that it was going to be as important as it is now. When COVID hit, it became like everybody, all of a sudden, it was a resource needed. So yeah, that's how long I've been doing it for.
I can sort of see, listening to you explain it, I can see why there might be a bit of a barrier of entry for brands rather than individuals. Because thinking about the actual cost, so if you say, for example, five years and doing it frequently, if you do those numbers in your head about what your time is worth over that time period, that's a lot of money for someone to actually have to pay for that. Whereas if you're doing it for free individually, you've almost got a slight edge being able to do that versus a big company who has to pay someone, or at least, I think pretty much if you're a big company, regardless of who it is, you're going to have to pay someone for that time, right? So
I think, and do you know what then, Thomas? I think that's exactly where it is. It's a bit of a David Goliath story. I think as time moves on, it might be more accessible to the to the kind of the big brands, but right now you're so right, the upfront cost of time and resource is so, and financial cost is so high, that it's only really worth it if you are the business owner, you are it's a side hustle, whatever it may be. You have a massive edge, and the reality is, it's the only edge you really have. This is what I say to people all the time. Like, that's what, I've worked in corporate, I've done all these different things, and when you try to play a corporate game, if you are a creative person, whatever it may be, if you're in finance, you're in design, you're in whatever it is, if you try and play the game with like the same way as these corporates, you will never win. You will never win because they have more money, more resources, they can outlast you, and they have a brand. But if you play a game they can't play, then you have a huge advantage. You have disadvantages as well, but you have this advantage of, like, so people always say, do you want to build your brand around your name or a business? I'm like, well, build it around your name. If it's just you and you have no chance of scaling, build it around your name, because that makes you unique. That's something that people don't get. I think I don't know how they're going to implement it into big corporate businesses. I'm sure they'll find a way, but I can imagine it's going to cost them hundreds and hundreds of thousands and a lot of leap of faiths. And these corporate companies don't take leaps of faith. They take calculated risks that see reward. And the problem you have right now with definitely with personal branding as the kind of mecca of this, and then social selling and content marketing falling underneath that, it is a very early adopter phase. You have to look at things like Google Trends and things like that, and you can see that the term personal brand, social selling, not so much content marketing, but personal brand and social selling, they've had a huge hike over the last 2 or 3 years, where people are searching it. They are Googling it. They are looking for it on YouTube. They're looking all over. So it's still the data you said about tests. The data, I don't think, is there enough, apart from these massive, Elon Musk's and people like that. But comparing those is like, what's the point? Like you're comparing apples to oranges. You need to
You've
see
got a story of your own about that. You've got some at least anecdotal tests about building a personal brand for your business. I mean, to what degree? I'm interested in knowing. So you built up a personal brand for that company, and you started getting leads, well, I would say sustainable leads coming in. Did that continue regardless of whether you posted content out?
Yes, it did. Yeah. So the joke of it was, when I shut the business down, I got more leads than I did when I was doing it, because it compounds. So I made, I did, but it took, the joke of it took like 9 to 10 months to get any real sustainable level of lead, like one a week, like it really took ages. And that's the hard bit. You feel, I think most people fail because they feel silly, and you do feel silly. There was some real lows where you think, I'm making these videos every single day and not one person even cares, and I'm like, why am I doing this? It continued. Once you've got the ball rolling, like a flywheel effect, it keeps spinning, and it gets easier. It gets a hell of a lot easier, because again, with an influence principle of social proof, if more people like it, then more people will like it. It's really silly. And I see that with podcasts, like I watch the analytics of my podcast, and I'm like, oh, it worked really hard to get it off the ground for like the first 10 weeks. I worked harder in the 10 weeks than I've ever since. And it's like really, really low. And then all of a sudden it goes bigger and bigger and bigger. And then they times 10 and they times 20. And it does work. But if you're smart with it, this is where, that's a different thing with social selling. You need to, one thing that people do very, not wrong, but we're talking about strategy level versus kind of like a top level strategy as opposed to a platform level. If you build your brand on social media platforms, you be prepared to constantly have to feed the beast, because that's the way it works. Your post is only as good as it was yesterday. But if you build your platform, your social selling, we'll use that, keep it in line, your social selling platform on a evergreen search engine based thing, podcasting, YouTube, blogging, those three really, then that's when you're going to see an exponential amount of return on your investment. A guy that I know, a guy called Nick Nimmin, he's a YouTuber, came on my show, and he's coming close to 1 million subscribers. He's like the #1 YouTube coach guy. He uploads once a week now. He's doing it since 2014, but he was doing it 3 times a week. But he said, I've got so many videos out there now that answer all the questions that people want, that I only have to upload once a week to keep the algorithm happy, but all the content is already there. And I make more money now than I ever made when I was doing the other thing. So it's that initial investment, but building on a search engine. So YouTube, podcasting, and blogging, and smartly, really, if you get good at it, do all three. That's going to maximize that chance of having that kind of, not, I hate the word passive income because there's no real such thing as real passive income, but like not real passive income, you know? So, but it's going to increase that lead source all the time if you have the where someone can search that question. And that's the sad thing with something like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. You might answer that question for somebody, put it up on there in a 1 minute, 2 minute video. The person who needed that question is not looking on that day, and then he goes onto Google and or YouTube and searches that question 6 months, 2 years from now, and your video didn't surface, but someone else's did. They uploaded 2 days ago because you didn't put it in a place where it could constantly be found to be a resource to people. I think that's a big mistake that people make, and they do that because that word SEO scares the life out of general people because they think it's really difficult, and it's really not. Just use some basic software. TubeBuddy, use some basic software on, just answer the public. Any basic thing, just create content and put it in a place where people can find it.
I've heard SEO referred to as a labeling exercise. So
that's it. Yeah, it's SEO is. One mistake I've done, I said 6 years. I would be so much further ahead if it's in 6 years. If I didn't, I built my brand exactly the thing I told you not to do just then. That's how I know. I put my hand in the fire, they touch the iron. I didn't just touch the iron. I held the iron for like 4 years. Like I know how wrong it is to do that. SEO, I ignored it. And one of my very close friends is an SEO like wizard. That's what he does. And he was like, you need to do this. You need to do this. And then when I interviewed enough people, these high performers, and I said this to my wife, I interviewed a range of influencers and a range of kind of experts. The influencers I got off the calls, and I was like, because and you think you're okay, but like you're just constantly churning it out. And then these experts were people who'd built brands on YouTube, on podcast, through podcasting, and they were business people, and they were making money, and they had teams, and all of them, every single one of them, built their platform on an SEO-based thing, created a value ladder that moved them quickly to an email list so they could then retarget them every single day with the content they were making. All of them did that. And so that was where I was like, okay, I need to change the way I work because that's not smart. That's smart, and the other one is hard. But if you apply the two concepts, you could do really, really well.
Well, coming back to social selling for a second, because I'm conscious of the question of how would you respond to someone who's like, I've got a average following, they're not necessarily talking about engagement, but they say, how do I turn that person from a follower to a customer or a lead? How do you respond to that question?
You have to first of all, if you've got a kind of average following, you have to re-educate your audience to see you as one thing and one thing only. So that's the very first step we do, is that I would look at someone, I'd say, okay, let's look at your content, look at your message. What is it you want to be the number one for? So let's say we're talking about SEO. So you want to be the number one SEO guy. So if you came to me and said that, I'd have to go, okay, so let's go through your content and let's say every single post, if it doesn't talk about SEO, then we need to stop it. That'd be the first thing I'd say. That's how you're going to get people to buy from you, because they need to see that you are, because people only think about you in one way. And I hate this. This is our biggest flaw, is that we believe that people care about us, and they don't. They don't. That's not a horrible thing. It's just that we're pigeonholed. So we all have our family friend, our school friends, our work friends, but to our school friend is not. They don't wake up in the morning and go, I'm Ash's school friend. They wake up in the morning and go, I'm this multifaceted being. I have all of these different things going on. And the reality is, the first way you turn your followers into customers is you make it super, super easy for them to identify you as one thing. As soon as they can identify you as that one thing, when they need you, don't chase them down. When they need you, they'll come to you because you're the first thing that comes to mind when they need you. That's how you do it. It's all to do with attention span. The average human attention span is 8 seconds. That was gone down from 12 seconds. It was 12 seconds in 2000, and in 2 decades, we've gone down to around 8 seconds.
Dumbing ourselves down.
I think TikTok and things like that is to blame, that's for sure. But it is. We're getting dumber and dumber. So I always say when I work with people, the first thing I say, if I can't tell what you do in 8 seconds from jumping on your platform, on your social profile, then that's the first fail. That's the first hurdle. And the problem is a lot of us will look at people who are successful influencers and we do what they do. But they're years, decades ahead of us. You know, you see someone like Mark Cuban, it's like in his profile, it might say like, I like toast. You see it, they do that on purpose. They're funny. They might can do random things. But if I jumped on yours, Thomas, and me and you, we've just met each other today through this. We don't know each other properly. So it's kind of, this is this thing. So if you jumped onto my profile and it said, I got into touch with you, can I come on your show? I want to talk about social selling. And then you go, yeah, you jump on my profile and it says, hi, I'm Ash. I like toast, taking long walks in the park and my 3 dogs. You're going to be like, okay, I'm not 100% sure. But if you jump on my Instagram, LinkedIn profile and it's like, which all of mine says, Ash Borland, personal brand coach, personal branding, content marketing, social selling. Here is my masterclass. This is my podcast. And every single one of them says that. And every single post you click on, it says personal branding, social selling, content marketing. That's increasing the chance of you going, actually, if you did or didn't, depending on what you think, actually, this is someone I potentially would like to speak to. You have to think about that when you say if you're a very first person, you have to think about that. If you do, does every single thing show what you do for that one keyword, really, like that one thing? I can challenge that most people is no. I'm just picking up numbers here, but I reckon 98% of people is no. Because we can't help ourselves. We can't help ourselves but want to show the world we're more than one thing. But just keep that to yourself. Keep that with your family and friends. Use social media, use your networking as a tool to make it super easy for the person who needs your service to think about you. That's the first thing you can do. All the other stuff is just ways to optimize it. But the first thing is get your ego out of the way and decide what you want to be known for.
It's a really good point. I laughed because when I do prep on guests, I kind of look at the profile and I try to categorize what that conversation will be. In the way that I talked to you before our podcast, I was like, oh, do you mind talking about social selling? Because I looked at your profile. It's one of the things that you have expertise in. So I was like, oh, yeah, I'd like to talk about that. But if you, as you say, if you were saying that you like toast, then I'd be like, well, I don't know what to talk to you about. I have to look further. I can't have a conversation about how we both like toast.
Well, I do like toast, so we can have a bit of that. But yeah, I don't know if it's on target. But that's the thing, I think that's where that is. If you can do that, and your listeners doing this, if you can get your head around that, you will be so much further ahead than anybody of your competitors, because your audience will thank you, because they'll go, thank you for just giving me the information I need, as opposed to trying to work out. Because if it takes longer than 8 seconds to put you in that category, we'd rather just not have you in the category. And this is where, if you've ever had this, I've had it, I actually very rarely get it. It's visibility over ability. You ever lost business to somebody who's way worse than you? They're worse. You're like, why did I lose to them? It's because they're more visible and clearer. That's it. It's not that I liked them more. It's none of that. It's the thing of, they made it very obvious for the person, obviously personality and things, but it made it very clear that's what you do. And that's the simple way.
It's a principle also that I try to share with clients, because I do pay-per-click management, or my company does. And one of the things I always share is, if someone clicks on an ad, goes to your site, they need to immediately know what you do as a company. And all of the jargon and, descriptions of stuff which it's difficult to explain is going to make it that much less probable that you're going to get an inquiry out of that person.
Your line of work, I find your line of work incredibly hard. Really interesting, but that is super, super important more than anything, because you're paying for them to jump on that site. And it's so vital. That's what we say about this social selling. Social selling is part of it, but really the whole thing is that it feeds into all paid ads, all organic. So it needs to be clear. PPC more than anything. God, yeah. I mean, like you'd be spending a lot of money on a lot. Like I always love that. It's like they say you can't polish a turd, but you can roll it in glitter. You know, you can't make it look good. If you pay that money and then they land on your site, and you might have this with clients. They go, "Oh, it doesn't work, Thomas," and you're like, "No, it works. Your site's not converting because it's unclear." That's all.
Well, coming back to you briefly mentioned something about CTA. One of the things which I've seen someone who is particularly, should we say, good at being on camera, and at the end of like any content or anything like that, they're like, if you want to know more, visit me at X domain, and I'll speak to you again soon or something like that. And it's kind of like the most of it is a value add. And then just at the end, if you want to learn more, go here. And that's a type of social selling. What do you think about that approach?
I think it's brilliant. So that's where the CTA, I call them like soft CTAs and hard CTAs. So that's where, like, I think that's exactly what you should have. So you should, like I say, like sending the, Alice further down the rabbit hole. So you want, if someone got to the end of the video, which is hard, very rarely do people ever get to the end of a piece of content anyway. Mm-hmm. If they get to the end, you should provide them with a access to get to the next piece, whether that's subscribe, whether that's check out my free whatever, like, you can do that. Like, you can do whatever you want. There's no right or wrong. Where the CTAs that I find hard is it's the hard CTAs. So it's like things like at the end of this, if you want to learn how to build a personal brand and got your social selling potential, give me a call and we'll go on a discovery call and you can be a one-to-one coaching client. You're like, no, don't do that. Don't ever do that. Like, and I see this all the time when I work with a lot of people in finance. I see it a lot with people, but when I worked in finance, when I work with the finance people, it's like mortgages. And they'll go, this is a fixed rate. Da, 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 da. If you need your mortgage sorted, give us a call. I'm like, nobody does that. Whereas actually, you send them further down the rabbit hole, more content, more value. Now you can we talk about value ladders. You can push them up the rung. So if you want them off of, that's what I do with mine. Every piece of free content, podcast, YouTube, anything like that is designed to push you to the next free rung, but it's a higher level of value. So it's a masterclass. But the masterclass is free. There's no social selling at the end of the masterclass. But at the end of the masterclass, it does say there are some deals at the bottom. If you've enjoyed this, you can check them out. There's no like, come and work with me. It's just, there are things. We're going further up the value ladder. The goal, though, is if you try and get them straight, it's like trying to take something. I'm going to sound a bit crude, so I won't do it too much, but it's like saying to somebody, take me to dinner before you take me to bed. It is that type of thing. You have to slowly ease that client in. And some of these people will be in that kind of feedback loop of watching your free content for some of them forever. Some of them are going to be forever. Some of them will be for a year. Some of them will be one. Some will watch one video and they'll go straight to the masterclass. Then they'll go to the masterclass and go straight to the paid thing. Or some of them will go, some of them will just search you. I've had that. They'll search and they'll go, oh, I just saw you're a guy in social selling. Can you coach me? Like, do you see my content? This week's thing. It's all not about yourself, but your ego gets in the way. Oh, have you watched my videos? I don't know. No, I've never. Do you do videos? I'm like, yeah. but I know I just found you. And they're like, okay. So those type of things are great. Anyone that does that, you should be sending them somewhere. Otherwise, if you don't send them anywhere, then you're just being a really nice person, but you're not building your business. You need to make them either. So decide. I think the best thing to do, though, is have one thing you send them to all the time. So like that guy saying, check on my website. That's really cool. Website's really good to do that. A course, a masterclass, but a free thing that's a next level, which is more what I would call active consumption as opposed to passive consumption. So social media is passive. We do this all the time on social media. We think people are going to sit. When are we looking at our phones? Most of the time, we've got young children. I'm looking at my phone while I'm sat on the toilet. That is when I am looking on social media. Then I'm not watching a masterclass while I'm sat on the toilet. I'm scrolling through. And that's what people say. Or if you're walking the dog, that's what people can't get their head around is social media is passive. So you small bite-sized chunks, that's going to increase that value to the audience with the option to opt into something that's larger, that's free. And it should be free. You know, in my opinion, some people will say, you know, charge a small amount of money to get the buy-in. I don't disagree with that, but it's not something that I like. I'm a big believer of, you know, give way more for free than you charge, because if you do that, it's super obvious why you charge what you charge and why you're valuable, because you've given way more than you take. So yeah, that would be my take on it.
Have you got any thoughts on manufacturing celebrity online? And I feel like a lot of people, as you said earlier, you see other people doing a particular type of content, and that's what you try and model, rather than if you're like a business person. It's almost like a wrong strategy in some sense. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's dangerous. I think it's really dangerous for yourself and for your mental health. And I think it's the reason why I talk about, you know, social media at the beginning being a bit of a cesspit. And I think it's dangerous. I think it's really dangerous. It's the bane of my existence with clients. We can all, like, you could do it with you, Thomas. I could do it with anyone. Like, you can manufacture celebrity quite easily. You can make yourself feel. There's certain, every social platform has a like a strategy and kind of a formula that makes it go viral. All of them, they all do. You know, like I did when I use TikTok. I've been on every platform. I use them. You know, I got a video mega viral on TikTok because I had a coach who came in, taught me, follow this method and you do it. I need to do it because I need to understand. So I paid the guy to teach me, but it just was so on me. So it doesn't help. And that's the same thing. You know, I think it's dangerous. It's like, and I was talking to someone about this yesterday. You need to always anchor to your why you're doing it. If you're trying to manufacture celebrity, this is the thing people get wrong. If you're trying to manufacture this kind of influencer celebrity status because you think it's going to help your business, I can tell you right now, you're going to get business, but you're not going to get as much business as you think. And actually, it's going to do more harm to your business than good, because people will see you as an entertainment source. Influencers in their own right and are amazing. And I've interviewed a few. I said they're good and like they are, but like they're a different, it's an entirely different business model. They're entertainment. So when businesses come to people and go, I want to generate leads and info and like kind of clients from social media, I'm going to do what Logan Paul is doing. It's not going to work, but you'll get people follow you, and you'll get people, and you see it all the time. You can say controversial things. You can say LinkedIn's rife with it right now. It's terrible. That you can do those things and you might have hundreds of thousands of likes. But I had a joke with a client. I said before, I was like, I did a live stream on LinkedIn. And I said, I did a live stream on LinkedIn yesterday. I was chatting with her yesterday, and I said, she did a post on LinkedIn. Post was a TikTok post. It did really, really well. She had about 500 likes and about 600 comments. It was massive. She does really, really well. And I had like 8 likes and like 2 comments, of which one of those comments, someone called me Alex, not Ash. So that's always great as well. And I said to her, she was like, oh, I don't know how you do it. And I was like, but you don't realize from that, because it's not the people who like or comment. I said I had 6 people join my masterclass from that live. And I had 3 discovery calls booked in for one-to-one coaching. So it's not about the celebrity status. She didn't get any business from the post she posted. It's not about that. And actually but it makes us feel good. And I said it to her, I said, it's like, it's the sugary donut versus the salad and the going to the gym, getting on the bike, going for a run. One takes time. We know it doesn't feel great, but it has great results for our life, our health, our longevity. The other one makes us feel great because it tastes good and it's all fun. A lot of these, and this is the sad thing, I think, is a lot of these social, we talked about, you said about the corporate companies, a lot of these entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, small businesses, they're constantly looking for validation that they're doing well. And this plays into them. So it like lures them in. You're like Hansel and Gretel with the witch and the sweets, you know, it lures them in. And it's like, look how many people like me. And I'm like, yeah, but don't do that. Like, don't get lured into it, because it makes you feel like you're successful. And the reality is, the way I would judge success, I'm not a financially activist in finance, but if it doesn't affect your bottom line financially, or makes you happy with joy, not pleasure, so not a dopamine hit, but actually fulfills you, don't bother doing it. And that's the issue. And that's why we have a society full of people who take photos of things and like, buy new clothes and all that stuff. It doesn't help. In fact, it'll do much more damage to your social selling prospects. That's for sure.
I feel like that information is probably highly valuable for people who are considering doing a type of personal branding. It's going to be a bit of a generalization or a vague question, but if someone is talking about like becoming a celebrity or online or something like that, then you're talking big numbers. But if you're talking about acquisition of people on your webinar or people on your email list, probably doesn't need to be that many in order to start feeding that. So what should people aim for in terms of a following if they have the right goals?
That's a great question, actually, Thomas, and I think it's right on topic for myself, because this has been my pet hate. I said for about 4 months now. The celebrity status is massive numbers. You're very right. For the short stuff, like, you can do it with like 100 followers. You can do it with like 100 people, because this is something that, like, a good friend of mine is a TikTok coach, and he's very good at TikTok for business, which is very rare. That's why I kind of found him. He doesn't do any of the weird TikTok stuff. He's a business guy and teaches business owners how to do well on TikTok. And he said, we need to get some realism put back into our lives with it. He said, if 100 people follow you, if you put 100 people in a room, it's 100 people. He was like, there's a lot of people. But we have been disconnected from it. So the reality is, you can do it with 0 followers. You just got to start making content and get 1 and then 2 to start to see some feeding in. I would say the follower count. So first thing with that, I would say avoid certain platforms like Instagram or things like TikTok or anything that's kind of an escapism. They're made very much for that type. They're made for escapism content, entertainment type of people. So if you try and build your brand on Instagram and you're a service, there's no indexation. You've got to put yourself in the best possible chance to succeed. If you do a YouTube video, you do a podcast, you use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a search engine. It's very, very good. If you're a business person, you can see results. You can make a lot of money on less than 500 followers on LinkedIn. A lot of money, because it shows it to everybody. So I don't think you need to focus on the following at all. What you have to focus on more than anything, though, is making sure the right people follow. That's more important than anything. And the reason why that is because if you get lots of people to follow you, and we do this all the time, follow for follow, or spam it out, tell all your friends and family to follow. I used to joke about this with my mortgage content. My sister was like, I don't like your content. I said, unfollow then. Well, why would I unfollow you? You're my brother. I was like, no, I don't want you on there, because if you don't like it, people who are like you won't like it as well. And these algorithms will show it to people who are like you. So you're doing a favor by unfollowing people. And so that's what you have to really think of, is you're better off having 100 great people than a million, try not to swear, a million awful people. You know what I mean? Like, so that's the thing you got to focus on, but there's no number. You are a social seller the moment you decide to be. There's no, and I don't know if this ever feels like this, like, we're on a podcast now with podcasters, there's this thing where you feel like, well, at what point can I call myself a podcaster or a YouTuber? The moment you decide to pick up a microphone and talk, that's when you are. And that's the moment when you start to try and monetize. That's the moment when you should. I had a guy come on my show called Nick, and he's like I said, this YouTuber, a big guy, and he does this, and it was amazing, because what he said was, he's got this polarizing question. I said to him, when should you start to monetize your YouTube channel? He said, if you have one video on your YouTube channel, you have monetized one video too late. I was like, oh. He said, absolutely. He said, you don't open your shop front and go, well, we'll wait till there's 10 people out the front and then we'll start. Just start.
Good point. And it goes nicely into what your goals are. Have you got any personal branding goals or business goals?
Yeah, I do. I have lots of goals. I actually have one. There's one goal that is I have lots of like little, like goals and targets, but I have one overarching goal, which is massively bracketed. It's hugely large. I want to be the number one person in personal branding as in personal branding education in the world in 2 decades. So that is my thing. This is what people get understand. So I'm 30 and I want to, by the time I'm 50, be the number one, like world renowned, known, not famous, not at all, but that people, when they think personal brand, they think me. And I think that to do that will take 20 years of, and this is just hopefully giving some kind of guidance to how long my brain kind of is thinking, is that's 20 years of studying and learning and growing. And, you know, I set this goal 2 years ago when I started doing this kind of part-time. In 2 years, I was quite shocked how low the bar was. So I was like, maybe 20 years might be a bit easier than thought. But that's my number one goal. Every single thing I do, obviously not outside of my fun, but in my business life, if it doesn't take me one step closer to that thing, then I have zero interest in doing it. And that is my number one goal. So every other goal would just be enveloped into that goal. Obviously, I break it down into 90-day chunks and all that stuff. But my idea is that and I'm not a celebrity, a scholar. That's the idea, that someone can ask you a question and go, it's that, and it's that, and it's that, and it's that. So that's the overarching thing, which is why I'm coming on your show. It's why I go on shows, to the one to spread this information. It helps me.
I think you've done a very good job of that. So thank you. I was about to wrap it up, but I just have to ask, what do you think personal branding looks like in 20 years?
In 20 years, I think personal branding will be a necessity. I think everyone will do it. I think we're going to move more and more to the era of kind of corporate business, I think, is going to go. I don't know whether it will come back in 20 years. I'm not sure, but I think you're going to see over the next 10 years this breakdown of these corporate companies. And the reason why I think that is because the internet has leveled the playing field. It makes people, we used to go to corporates and big conglomerates because the brand really mattered, because we could trust Tesco's, or we could trust because we knew that was the case. But the internet now has connected us all together. That is really the rise of personal brand. People are making their hiring, their buying decisions purely based on the person behind the product, not so much the product itself. And so I think we're going to see that move more and more and more. The pandemic has sped that up because so many people are being made redundant. We had this in 2008 when lots of people were made redundant. The rise of small businesses shot through the roof. I think that's going to be a big part of it. I think maybe in the next 10 years, so like I don't think for 10 years, but in 10 years time, we might start being able to broach the subject of big corporate businesses building their employees' personal brands. I think that's where we'll go, where we need to talk about, when you come into the company, we're going to build your brand for you. We're going to turn you into, like, and I absolutely can't stand football. So anyone who hates me for that, I do apologize. But like a football player, you know, like these sports players come in and they nurture they help the team with their skills, but they also get their brand built by their PR departments and things like that. So I think that any business who isn't in 10 years, I think it'll take about 10 years, but 10 years time to get to that point where these companies, and you see that with things like Virgin, Google, Apple, they already kind of do that. But they're going to go further. It's going to have to be a necessity. And then I think that's where it'll be in 20 years time. I think it'll just be the norm. It's just your CV, really.
Fascinating. I shouldn't have asked it, because I feel like there's like a new episode there on the future of personal branding. But
Yeah.
Ash Borland, thank you very much. And where's the best place for people to find you?
Best place to find me is you can listen to a podcast, which is Personal Branding Secrets, new episodes Monday to Friday. Or you can go find me on YouTube, which is where the best content is, which is condensed for you, which is Ash Borland Personal Branding Coach.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.